DAGGERHEART has an incredible amount of choice when it comes to character creation. You can absolutely craft just about any concept that you can imagine. And the best part is that they are seemingly constantly working on more options to give players. Even though we just had the core rulebook released, they've already published playtest material for 4 new classes, 6 new ancestries, and 6 communities. The design team is showing no sign of slowing down. So today I wanted to go over the steps for actually creating a character in DAGGERHEART. Since my previous videos have gone over most of the core concepts, this one will be about putting it all together. So we're going to be building a character. But to make it a little bit more exciting, we're also going to make this video a giveaway, where you can win a digital copy of DAGGERHEART through Demiplane. All you need to do is subscribe to the channel if you have not already, like this video, and leave a comment letting me know what character you plan to make first. Oh, and keep watching to the end to give me that sweet, sweet watch time. The winner will be randomly selected from the top level comments on Sunday, July 6, 2025 at 9 AM Eastern. See the full rules in the description below. Otherwise, good luck, and thanks to Demiplane for providing this opportunity. Alright, let's get started making our character. The first step in the process is to choose our class, which, just like every other TTRPG, is kind of the central pillar of our character. It provides the abilities that we're going to get access to over the course of a campaign, it helps define the role that we may have in our party, and helps us further define ourselves with our subclass, which we're going to discuss a bit later. DAGGERHEART currently offers 9 core classes to choose from. The Bard, Druid, Guardian, Ranger, Rogue, Seraph, Sorcerer, Warrior, and Wizard. Though, like I mentioned, there are currently 4 more in playtest right now: the Warlock, Witch, Assassin, and the Fighter. Each class in the game is paired with 2 domains, and currently, if we're ignoring playtest content, every domain is used twice, which means that every class will share a domain with another class. For example, the Bard is part of the Grace and Codex domains, while the Rogue is part of the Grace and Midnight domains. Then another class will share the Codex domain, and another might share the Midnight domain, and so on until all 9 have been used twice. Domains represent the core theme of a class, but what exactly does that mean for us mechanically? Well, our domains are what provides our cards that we can actually use during play. These are what essentially amounts to our core class features. When you create your character initially, you're able to select 2 domain cards, 1 from each domain, or 2 from the same one. Additionally, as we level up, you'll be able to gain access to more. We're not going to be picking our domain cards just yet, we'll save that for a bit later, once we've fleshed out more about our character's details. Each of the 9 classes offers unique abilities and features that make them truly stand out, and not just slight reflavorings of each other. The class that I've been the most excited to play is the Guardian, which is a powerful melee combatant, somewhat like if the Fighter and a Paladin from D&D were combined into one class. Now that we've selected our class, we can begin to fill in our character sheet a little bit. Our evasion score, which determines how difficult we are to hit, is determined by our class. As a Guardian, our base evasion score is set to 9, which is actually fairly low. This does kind of make sense though, as we are fully planning to stand in the way of our allies and protect them. We're there to tank some hits and hopefully deal out some brutal damage of our own. Armor in DAGGERHEART is an entirely different thing, which we're going to discuss very soon. Next, let's talk hit points. As a Guardian, we begin with 7 hit points. This will probably sound a little bit low if you're coming from D&D, but you should be aware that it is impossible to be one-shot in DAGGERHEART. The reason for this is because of the damage threshold system, so let's quickly address that, especially since a few of our Guardian's domain cards and features will interact with the system. The damage you take in DAGGERHEART is not equivalent to the amount of hit points that you lose. Instead, when damage is rolled, the number is compared to your damage thresholds, and wherever it falls within that range, that determines how many hit points that you mark. Your damage thresholds are generally determined by the armor that you're wearing, with a few exceptions. Let's say we were wearing chainmail armor. This has a base threshold of 7 and 15. We're supposed to add our level and potentially some other things to these base thresholds, but for the purposes of this example, we're not going to bother with that. So with a threshold of 7-15, what this means is that for any damage between 1 and 6, it falls in our minor threshold and we'd mark 1 hit point. Any damage that's between 7 and 14 falls in our major threshold and we would mark 2 hit points. And for anything that's 15 and above, that falls within our severe threshold and we would mark 3 hit points. That's it. You can't ever mark more than 3 hit points in a single hit, even if a creature did 100 damage to us. Now, there is an optional variant rule that creates a 4th massive damage threshold, which is always double our severe threshold, which does allow for a 4th hit point to be marked, but it's an optional one, so we're not going to bother considering it here. So if a creature attacks us and dealt 13 damage, that would fall into our major threshold, meaning we would mark 2 hit points. However, we are also able to use our armor to reduce incoming damage by 1 threshold. With our chainmail, we can see that we have a base armor score of 4, which means that we can do this 4 times until we need to repair our armor, which can be done during a short or long rest. But it is important to note that unless a feature allows otherwise, you are only able to spend 1 armor slot on an incoming attack. This means that we could not spend 2 armor slots to reduce that 13 damage all the way down to 0 and take no hit points. I know that it sounds like a lot, but I promise it's really not. Now that we've discussed armor and damage thresholds, there is one more important concept to discuss: hope and fear. Unlike in D&D, when you make a roll in DAGGERHEART, you're not rolling a d20. Instead, we're rolling 2 d12s that are known as our duality dice. These must be dice of different colors that represent hope and fear. When you roll them, you add the 2 values together and you indicate which one rolled higher. So for example, a 3 on your hope die and a 7 on your fear die would indicate that you rolled a 10 with fear. This grants the GM a fear token that they can use to empower enemies and other environmental effects. But if you rolled an 8 on your hope die and a 7 on your fear die, you would indicate that you rolled a 15 with hope, and you would gain 1 hope, which is a currency that you can use to power up your own abilities. A new character also begins their journey with 2 hope. Now, this brings us to our hope feature. Every class has their own hope feature, which they need to spend 3 hope to use. For Guardians, ours is called Frontline Tank, which lets us spend 3 hope to immediately clear 2 armor slots. This can give us some incredible staying power and allow us to keep going for longer during a fight. It essentially allows us to restore our armor without needing to resort to a rest. We're also going to indicate this on our character sheet. And finally for our class, we also get our class feature. As a Guardian, ours is called Unstoppable. This is a very cool one that provides a variety of benefits to ourselves, from certain condition immunities, increased damage, and the ability to reduce damage even more. It's a really fun feature that lets us feel even more powerful in the midst of combat. The next thing that we have to do is to pick our subclass. Currently, every class has 2 subclasses available to them, and they get to select them immediately at level 1. As a Guardian, our options are Stalwart and Vengeance. Stalwart is all about being a defensive tank while still providing a strong offense, whereas Vengeance is more about defense through violence. Each subclass provides us with 3 features: their Foundation, Specialization, and Mastery features. Our Foundation feature we get immediately at level 1. However, as for our Specialization and Mastery features, you technically don't even ever need to get them, but you can acquire them as one of our level up options in higher tiers. Stalwart Guardians sound so fun to me, so we're gonna go with that. This provides us with a permanent +1 to our damage thresholds, and when we take physical damage, we are allowed to mark an additional armor slot to reduce it, rather than being limited to 1 slot per attack, as is the standard. With our class and subclass sorted, the next thing to select is what DAGGERHEART refers to as our heritage. This is a combination of our ancestry and community, or what in D&D they call species and background. As far as our ancestry goes, the game currently offers 18 choices, with everything from your classic dwarves, elves, and halflings, to some of the more obscure ones like Simia, Ribbits, Fungrel, Galapa, and of course, humans. Each ancestry provides us with 2 ancestry features, and there's also the option for a mixed ancestry, which allows you to get features from 2 different ancestries, but we're not going to be getting into that in this video. For this character, I have the vision of a damage-soaking tank, so I'm going to be picking the Galapa, which are basically turtle people. As Galapa, we gain a bonus to our damage thresholds equal to our proficiency. This begins at +1 and will naturally increase at certain levels, and we can also opt to increase it further during certain level ups in higher tiers. As a side note, anytime you see the text saying, "do X thing with your proficiency," that indicates how many dice are rolled, which is based on your proficiency. For example, if you had a weapon that dealt a d10 damage using your proficiency, the amount of d10s rolled is equal to our proficiency. I just wanted to mention that since I feel like it's fairly oddly explained in the book. Anyway, as Galapa, we have the ability to mark a stress to retract into our shell and gain a resistance to physical damage. But we can't move. A simple trade-off. Stress is another mechanic in DAGGERHEART. It's essentially an additional resource that's available to us. Some features, like the Galapa's Retract, allows us to mark a stress to do something cool. Sometimes though, enemies may cause us to mark a stress as a result of an attack or something else. You can kind of think of stress as our mental fortitude. Once our stress is full, being forced to mark one does actually spill over into our hit points and can cause us to have to mark one off as well, so it is a resource that is important to manage. As for our community, we have 9 to choose from. I like the idea of our Stalwart Guardian being Orderborn. These are people that keep discipline or faith at the forefront and value it extremely highly. This lets us turn our values and sayings into mechanical benefits for us when we can describe how we are embodying those values. And when we do this, we can instead roll a d20 for our hope die, though we can only do this once per long rest. I'm already picturing this valiant paladin standing up for others and vanquishing evil at every turn. Next up, we need to assign our character traits. DAGGERHEART, like D&D, also has 6: agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. Pretty much all of these translate 1-to-1 from D&D, though it is worth noting that agility and finesse, the two abilities that would have fallen under dexterity, have been split, making for a stat that is far less powerful than dexterity in D&D. Constitution is also not part of the equation here at all. Our character sheet actually provides suggestions for what values we can put into our traits depending on the class that we're playing, and these will range from +2 to a -1. We're just going to go ahead and use these suggested values here, which means that we're going to put a +1 into agility, +2 into strength, -1 into finesse, 0 into instinct, +1 into presence, and 0 in knowledge. These traits will not only determine how good or bad we might be at succeeding on certain rolls, but they will also determine the types of weapons that we might want to use. Next, speaking of weapons, we get to pick our equipment. DAGGERHEART has two broad categories of weapons, physical and magical. As a stalwart guardian, we do not have a spellcasting trait, which means that we cannot wield magical weapons. However, we can absolutely use physical weapons. Our class sheet recommends picking up a battle axe, but the greatsword has always been more appealing to me, and that seems so much more fun. Greatswords are a strength-based weapon, which means that when we roll to attack, we get to add our strength modifier to the roll. It deals a d10 plus 3 damage using our proficiency, and it's two-handed. It also has the trait Massive, which does give us a -1 to our evasion, setting our 9 from our class down to an 8, but in exchange for that, when we succeed on an attack, we get to roll an extra damage die and then ignore the lowest result. This is a trade-off that I am absolutely willing to make. The next step is to choose our armor. We have 4 different choices to select from at level 1, each of which offers its own advantages and disadvantages. Lighter armor like Gambeson provides less protection, but actually boosts our evasion score, whereas heavier armor offers more protection, it can be used more often, but they do come with a disadvantage. We actually are not going to be selecting any armor for reasons that will become very clear very shortly. Our next step is to create our experiences. Experiences are a mechanic in DAGGERHEART that lets you apply your character's own unique expertise, knowledge, or experience with a certain task and gain a bonus to your roll when you attempt something that's related to it. Using an experience will require you to expend a hope, but the +2 bonus that you get from it can be quite powerful, so it can oftentimes be worth it. We begin at level 1 with 2 experiences, and the book suggests creating one that will be applicable in combat and another that will be useful outside of combat. You can kind of get as creative as you want with your experiences. They can be as simple as a single word or even a short phrase. The text offers plenty of examples to choose from, but for our combat-focused one, I want to get a little bit more creative here and say ours is "won't back down." The intent here for me is that if we're ever outmatched in a fight, or maybe if we're running low on armor slots, we just refuse to give up. Drawing on that sense of urgency and need, we can spend hope to add a +2 to our attack rolls. For our out-of-combat experience, we'll choose one of the provided examples and select Loyal. This is one where we could use when trying to convince people to help us or demonstrate our own nobility or any situation you can think of where it might apply. I remember being very skeptical of experiences at first, but I've since grown to love them, and since they cost a resource to use, it's not like they're constantly being spammed left and right. We're getting to the end now, and our final major step here is to select our domain cards. Being a guardian, the domains that we have access to are Valor and Blade. At level 1, we are able to select 2 domain cards. This can be 1 from each domain, or it can be 2 from the same domain. Despite the fact that Blade has some very strong cards available to us, the 2 cards that I want to pick both come from the Valor domain. The first is Bare Bones. This is the reason that we opted to not wear armor earlier. The way this works is that if we choose to not wear armor, we set our damage threshold according to our tier of play, and then add any relevant modifiers. It also sets our armor score to 3 plus our strength, and since our strength is +2, that means that our armor score becomes 5, which indicates how many total times we can use this before we need to recover it during a rest or with one of our other features. At level 1, we are in tier 1, which sets our base thresholds to 9 and 19. However, we first add our level to these so they both increase by 1. Then, Stalwart Guardians also gain a permanent +1 to our damage thresholds. On top of that, as a Galapa, we also gain a bonus to our thresholds equal to our proficiency, which at level 1 is 1. All of this adds up to setting our damage thresholds to 12, 22. This is quite strong. It's actually significantly better than even full plate armor at this level, and does not come with any of the downsides. The second card that I want to pick is also from the Valor domain, and it's called I Am Your Shield. This lets us, when a nearby ally would take some damage, to instead interpose ourselves to become the target of the attack. It also lets us mark any number of armor slots if we do take damage. I love the fantasy of getting in the way of a hit that would devastate an ally and protecting them. This is more or less all it takes to create a character in DAGGERHEART. I do want to point out one additional section, and it's actually one of my favorite aspects of character creation, and I love how they embedded it within the game, and that is for building our backgrounds and connections. The text provides you with questions to ask yourself or your party to help flesh out your character into greater detail. This can not only help you figure out what experiences you want to create or even which domain cards you choose, but it can also help to enhance your experience at the table and make the game feel more fun and rich. I would highly encourage you to at least consider these questions. They all differ depending on your class, and they can really help you figure out your character in a much more meaningful way than just numbers and stats. So that's character creation in DAGGERHEART. Let me know what you think about the process, and don't forget the giveaway, and let me know what character you want to make first. Check out some of my other videos, but otherwise, take care.